My name is Adam Hamilton. I'm the senior pastor at the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City, and I'm the host of this podcast, Making Sense of Faith. And this month we've been talking about forgiveness, and I wanted you to have a chance to hear a story that I find remarkable, touching, and inspiring. And actually, the story starts with a terrible tragedy, but today I find the way the story has sort of wound out or played out, I find inspiring and moving. And so I have with me today Scott Mosher. Scott is a city council member in the city of Overland Park. You have more jobs than any other human being I know of. You were an executive with fast food industry, McDonald's, Wendy's, for a short time Burger King. But you retired from that, and you've been in both working at the city council, but also in law enforcement for a number of years since then.
Right, I have, and I've been on with the Franklin County Sheriff's Department in court security for the last 3 years.
Yeah. So you're supposed to be, I suppose, retired, but you were working harder than you probably ever have. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. I put in more hours now than I ever did.
And I asked you if you have a day off, and I think the answer was no.
Not a full day off, but I have part days, enough time though to go golfing.
Good. Okay, yeah. That's good. That's awesome. Well, I wonder if you could just tell us the story of what happened with Mike, and the date of the tragedy was. Do you remember? You know the exact date. I can't remember it.
Yeah, the tragedy date was May 3rd of 2020.
Yeah. So can you walk us through what happened on that day?
Sure. I'll start from the beginning. I was out walking my dog. It was a normal Sunday. And I was out walking my dog, and Mike was heading to work.
Mike is your son?
Mike Mosher was my son, and he was heading to work, and it was not like him to go early. If he had to be there right at 6 o'clock, he would leave at 10:10, just enough time to get there and walk in.
Yeah, and he's a police officer.
And he was a police officer for Overland Park. And so this was probably about 25 minutes till the hour, and I said, "What, are you sick? What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm going to work." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. This is way early for you." And he said, "Well, I'm going to go mail some Mother's Day cards." And I said, "Mother's Day cards? You've never mailed a Mother's Day card in your life." And he said, "Well, I am this year. I decided I'm going to mail some Mother's Day cards." And his wife said, "Well, they're just going to sit in your car." And he said, "No, I'm going to leave early today, and I'll go mail them on my way to work." And that's what actually took him from his normal travel path to go to the station. He had to go out of his way to go to the post office. And the last thing he actually did was sent a picture to Corinne of his hand dropping the letters in the mailbox.
Corinne is his wife, and that's really, wife. He took a picture of that when he did it.
He took a picture of it.
Okay.
And so he had told me he'd had the best day ever with his family. They got up early, they had breakfast, they played games all day. He said, "I'm on a high." And the night before, he ended up in an altercation with a lady with COVID, and I had to bring him a uniform, and they basically strip him down and wash him and all that. And
during COVID, because the concern for...
And he said, "And by the way," and he opens his door, he said, "I have an extra uniform for tonight, just in case."
Just in case.
I told him I loved him. He petted the dog, and off he went.
And just in case anybody missed it, this is 6 in the evening, not 6 in the morning.
6 in the evening.
He had the night shift.
He had the night shift. He loved graveyard.
Yeah.
We call it graveyard, they call it midnights. But he loved that shift, and he worked it the majority of his career because he liked it so much. Yeah. Went in the house, got sat down for dinner, and then probably about 10 minutes later, Tyler came running in saying...
That's his daughter.
That's his daughter, and they lived right next door to us, and we moved there so we could watch her so that Mike could work midnights. And we were downsizing anyway, my wife and I. And she came running over and said, "My dad's been shot." I said, "What?" I just saw him 10 minutes ago.
And so he just left for work, left you 10 minutes before that.
And I said, "There's no way." I looked at my watch, said, "He's not even at work yet." Yeah. And she goes, "No, 3 officers showed up." And I said, "Is he okay?" And she said, "Well, they didn't say anything." So I knew right then that he had passed away. That he, I don't know how, but I was thinking traffic accident. Yeah. So we dropped everything, and myself and Tyler went out to the hospital because they said that's where they would be. And my wife and Corinne came a little later. Not too much later, but a little bit later, and he had passed away. And he had been shot in a traffic situation.
Yeah, altercation.
Yeah.
He was 37. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he was 38. He just turned.
Okay.
His birthday was May 1st.
Right. Corrine and he and Tyler would come to church here at Resurrection some of the time. And so I had seen them and had a chance to get to know them just a bit. And of course, Corine's mom was a very active part of our congregation as well.
She was.
So describe what happened in that altercation.
Well, he witnessed a traffic accident, hit and run, and he followed the suspect, and he called it in and was following, and Philip Carney was his name, and he pulled over the side of the road and got out of his car and started walking in and out of traffic at 123rd and Mackey. And Mike got out of his car, parked it over, and tried to talk him out of the road and said, hey, you need to get over here. I got people coming for you to help you. You know, let's get out of the street. And Phillips was basically, out of control. And he said, I hate you, police. And it went on from there. And then he pulled a gun while Mike was trying to get him out of the street. And then the fight was on. Philip fired twice. Mike fired, I believe it was 5 times. He killed Philip, and Philip killed him. One of the Philip's bullets went under his vest and caught his main artery. And that's how he passed away.
It was so tragic.
It was,
so tragic.
And it was something that everything lined up for him to be there, which wasn't normal.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can think of that it was something that the Lord said, hey, I need someone for this, and he said, here I am.
Yeah.
Pick me.
Yeah. That's a really powerful statement. And the reality is that this man could have killed multiple other people, as I remember.
Absolutely.
So Mike standing in the way of perhaps danger or death for who knows how many other people might have been.
Exactly. And he had made the statement that what he was going to do that day, the whole world would remember his name. And
so he'd come out. Philip had left the home that day intending to
left his home
intending to,
and he had an adversarial relationship with his parents. He had destroyed their car earlier, and there was a lot of animosity there. He had threatened them, and
they filed a report against their own son 2 days before.
They filed a report and tried to get his bail revoked. He had been arrested 2 other times for assaulting police officers, one with a blunt instrument during a burglary, and then another one using a knife, and he was still let out on bail. And while the bail went up some, there was somebody that kept bailing him out of jail. And Julie Carney and Paul finally got the judge to revoke the bail, but they hadn't caught up with him yet.
Oh, really? So it had been revoked, they just hadn't, nobody caught him?
That's my understanding.
Oh, my.
And they were trying to get it revoked, and in the meantime, him and Mike met.
Yeah. And this idea of, so we have a lot of police officers in our congregation and law enforcement, and for so many of them, the sense of calling, they feel called to protect the public, to take care of people in the public, whatever that looks like, however they need to be. But this idea you mentioned of, the Lord calling and him saying, here I am, leaving early, the sort of nudges that happened, there was a reason. It was putting the Mother's Day cards in the mail, but at the same time, there was something else going on there, and a sense of what we Christians speak of as providence, somewhere, and ultimately tragedy, and I teach our congregation. I think I shared this at the service. I recorded a video. It was COVID, and so we were trying to figure out what to do, and that, at least from my perspective, I don't think God wanted Mike to be shot. I think God did want Mike to protect people, and unfortunately, the tragic reality was that there was a shooter who had a gun and ended up taking his life. Well, let's talk about what's happened in the years since that time. And by the way, I think it was a year later, Mike was honored in the city of Overland Park with a street named after him. Am I remembering that correctly?
Right, he was. And there's Mike Mosher Boulevard, which is right down from where it happened. They also put up a memorial. There's a blue light there with a plaque where it actually happened.
Yeah.
And Mike Mosher Boulevard is a section of 123rd between Blue Valley Parkway and Metcalf, and it says Mike Mosher Boulevard.
Yeah, right over by Costco, I think, isn't it?
Right, it's right behind Costco and runs, actually, it's right across from the Justice Center in Overland Park.
Yeah, that was a good street to choose then.
It was,
Yeah.
and, Mike would probably be proud of that.
I think he would be, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you were struck with another tragedy a few months later when your wife passed.
I was. My wife went to get routine day surgery and to separate some scar tissue in her chest, and they used a laser, and it cut open her bowel, and she died of sepsis.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. That's
Yeah.
such a...
So it was 9 months after my son had passed away.
Oh, my.
And, it's, my wife and I, after Mike passed away, and, we had a really strong lesson in forgiveness.
Yeah.
And people ask me, how could you forgive? And my statement to them is, I have to, because I'd have been a bitter old person and been hard to live with for sure for my wife, but you have to have forgiveness in your heart, or otherwise you just let it fester and it becomes something different than just something bad that has happened. It changes your whole personality. And to be honest with you, I've gone through that.
Yeah.
When I was 8 years old, my mom was killed, hit by a train in her car. And I spent probably the first 15 years of my life being bitter. And so I know how that changed me as a person. And it wasn't until I met my wife, Shelley, that I actually learned how to cope. I don't know that I totally forgave, but I think I could cope with it and got a deeper understanding of the Lord's plan and that we would be together again. And I felt that I could move on with my life.
Yeah.
But it took me all of growing up, all through high school and into college and everything else. It took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah. It's the Greek word for forgive in the New Testament is aphiemi, which means to release or let go. And a lot of times people think to forgive means that you are saying whatever the person did was okay, but that's not what forgiveness means. It's not saying that that's okay. And it's not forgetting the pain. It's not saying that either. It's choosing to let go of both the right to be angry or to hate, or the releasing of, or the attempt to release the desire for revenge, or whatever it might be. And I'm just curious. So for you, with your mom, it was years of trying to finally get to the place. Did you finally feel like you released or let go of the hurt or anger related to your mother's death?
Actually, I probably didn't release that until after Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Mike taught me. What happened was, after Mike passed away, we got a card from a sister in our church. And she said, I'm so sorry what happened to Mike, but I want you to know that I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw Mike reaching down and grabbing Philip by the hand and saying, here, let me show you the way. And when she wrote that, I looked at my wife and she looked at me and she said, we have no malice in our heart, because that's exactly what Mike would have done. And so I learned something from him. And we looked at each other, and the night that Mike was killed, and we got this card the next day. The night that Mike was killed, we got a bunch of food brought over from one of the members of the Carney family.
The Carney family, the family
The
whose
Carney,
son
whose
had shot your
Philip
son.
shot Mike. And we didn't know where it come from, and Shelley wouldn't let him go without telling us where this huge food order from Jack Stacks came from. So he said, well, I hope I don't make you mad, but it's from the Carneys. I'm a Carney. And we looked at each other, and we didn't know what to think at the time.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, we just got that card. That's how quick the card showed up. I don't even know how. I think they dropped it off that night to one of the police officers who said, here's a card from you, because they were outside making sure we were okay. And they did 24/7 for probably 2 weeks.
So they were keeping watch over your house during that period of time.
Keeping watch over our house, making sure we didn't have people bothering us and that kind of thing. And when we read that card, she says, we got to call them because they lost a son too. And we knew how it felt to lose a son. I don't know that any parent should lose a son or a daughter.
Yeah.
We expect our parents as they get older that they're going to pass away, and it's expected. But when it's a son or a daughter and you're still here, I mean, it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah.
And so we called the Carneys, and they were devastated, of course. And we reached out to them, and we actually had them attend Mike's funeral. There was a lot of people that did not understand that. But we said that's what's going to happen because it was COVID, so they had everything was restricted as far as people coming. And I said, no, they're going to attend, and they sat right beside us. And then afterwards, Shelley and I went to Philip's funeral, and we went and we celebrated with them. It was a little different, but
That had to have been, I just can't even imagine. I think it's remarkable and amazing that you went to the funeral of the man who shot your son. And tell me, was that hard for you to go? What was going through your mind as you were there at that service?
actually, it was hard to walk in, but not because we didn't have love for the Carneys. I mean, this is probably several days later, right? I don't know, maybe a week later.
Yeah.
It's just we didn't know what to expect. I mean, we were among a family whose son just created a tragedy out in the community, and so we didn't know what to expect. But the love that was shown us by the Carney family and the friends, we didn't understand what we were doing. We didn't think it was anything that we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But we felt that the love that they had for us and for being there was incredible.
Yeah. Okay, I want to just make sure that our listeners have clearly caught this story. So Mike has been dead for a day or two when a member of the Carney family, whose son killed your son, brings over barbecue. Jack's Egg Barbecue, our best, arguably the best barbecue in Kansas City.
Sure.
And although good for Q39, Gates Barbecue, everybody else. Gotta
I like
always say
them
that.
too,
Yeah, exactly, me too.
Yeah.
And so they'd lost their son. They reached out to you and didn't even want their name to be known. They just wanted to somehow bless you or care for you. It was an act of love for you and compassion, even while they were grieving their own son's loss.
Absolutely.
And then you have this card that a woman in your congregation, are you all Catholic? I don't remember.
No, I'm with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
All right. So a woman in your congregation has written this card of the dream that she had, seeing your son reaching his hand down to Philip, who killed him, and saying, I want to help you, or come up here. What exactly did
He said, here, let me show you the way.
Let me show you the way. What a powerful vision. And that allowed you to be able to forgive
Instantly.
You, like, if your son could do this in eternity, you knew you had to do the same thing, and instantly you released any bitterness and
I don't know that I had a lot of bitterness because I was kind of in shock.
in shock, sure.
But at the same time, I mean, instantly I knew that that's the way we were going to go.
Yeah.
That they lost a son too, and we felt the pain of losing a son.
Yeah.
So we knew that that same pain would be theirs.
Yeah.
And whether it was that ours was right and his was wrong, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
What mattered is that we reached out to them and we comforted them as well as they comforted us.
Scott, I just find this such a beautiful and Christian, and not just Christian, just a human story. It certainly reflects what Jesus taught and how he lived, and his hanging on the cross praying, Father, forgive them, but they don't know what they're doing. But you live this. I just find this to be remarkable. And so what's happened in the years since then? All of that's happening just days after both of your sons have died, and you both are reaching out to be at each other's son's funeral, to care for each other. What's happened in the 5 years since then?
Well, we've gotten together, the Carneys and I, and I still get together with them, even though Shelley is no longer with us.
Yeah.
She's with us in spirit for sure. I mean, we still get together. We have dinner. I play golf with Paul, and we still talk about what we were faced with. And they're thankful for, as they put it, the grace that was extended to them.
Yeah.
I just look at it as it's what I would want to have happen to me if the shoe was on the other foot.
Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Right. I just, I don't see it as anything special.
Yeah.
I just see it as that's the way the Lord would want us to do it.
That is really remarkable. I just thank you so much for being here to share your story. And I know you've shared it with other people, but I find it deeply inspiring and moving what you have done and how God has worked through you in this. But what would you say to people who are struggling with forgiveness? I surveyed our congregation this week and found 66% of people say at least occasionally they struggle in forgiving. That many people wrestle with the ability to let go, and you did for many years when it came to your mom. Is there something you would say, or when you're trying to talk about forgiveness for other people? Is there a word that you feel like? I mean, you've given us a great witness, an example of this. But anything else you'd say that might be helpful for people who are struggling to forgive?
Well, I've been on both sides of that coin. I was on the side growing up where I had no forgiveness, and it was why me? Why would the Lord do this to me? Even though, and I didn't do anything to deserve it in my mind.
Right.
Especially as an 8-year-old kid and growing up.
Yeah.
And then I'm faced with that as an adult for what you might call the ultimate pain of losing a son.
Yeah.
And what I found is that forgiveness begins with the intent of our heart. I think that I've learned so much by forgiveness. I've changed. My whole outlook of life has changed. I've had people cross me and do things that, people say, well, you should be mad about that. I'm not mad. It doesn't mean that I think that there shouldn't be consequences, because there has to be consequences for decisions we make. We have our free agency, and, we exercise that, and there has to be justice when justice is due. But that's the Lord's... That's what the Lord does. It's not what Scott does.
Yeah.
And so I have to forgive because it allows me to live my life in such a way that I can hold my head up and I'm not ashamed of anything.
Yeah. Scott, that's just remarkable. Thank you so much for being willing to be here and share. Is there anything else you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
No, I'm looking forward to the panel on forgiveness. I have a love for the Carneys and their family.
Yeah.
I have a love for how they've helped me as well as I've helped them. And I guess I just want everybody to know that if there is a little forgiveness, it starts with ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves first so that others can forgive us. And I know too many people that have done things and they feel like they can never get beyond it. But to be honest with you, they're never going to get beyond it until they start with themselves and then let others forgive them for what they've done.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about that is when it comes, and I'm going to be preaching on that in another week, but when it comes to forgiving yourself, you're exactly right. If you can't forgive yourself, it's going to be hard to forgive anybody else. But this picture of God who is willing to forgive us, every reason not to forgive. And yet,
right.
Scripture says, as far as the east is from the west, so far shall God remove your sins from you. Or Jesus hanging on the cross, Father, forgive them. I mean, this picture, Jesus is constantly telling people, your sins are forgiven you. His willingness to release and let go. And he's more willing to forgive than we are even to ask. And so if God can do that for us, somewhere in that, we begin to have, I think, the capacity to forgive ourselves, to not excuse the things that we've done that were wrong, but to be able to accept grace and to release and let go.
And that's the hard part. I've always found it hard to accept grace.
Yeah.
And to accept when I've wronged somebody and I say I'm sorry and, I ask for their forgiveness because everybody knows I'm far from perfect. But when I ask for that forgiveness, it starts with me. And then at that point, I have an open mind that I can see how I can rectify that problem with that individual and fix it.
Yeah.
Because if you can't forgive yourself, then and you haven't repented and all that, how are you going to really move ahead?
Yeah.
I don't know that you can.
Yeah, that's a really good word. Well, we're going to end on that word. And I want to just say thank you for joining us today for the Making Sense of Faith podcast. Hope you'll join me again next time. Again, Scott, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Making Sense of Faith with Adam Hamilton. Do you know someone wrestling with life's biggest questions? Share this episode with them, because the more people willing to embrace the hard questions, the better. Do you want to go deeper? You can visit makingsenseoffaith.com to find the show notes and additional resources. That's also where you can sign up to get the notes and resources delivered straight to your inbox. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and leave us a rating in your podcast player. That'll make sure that you get the latest episodes and help others find the podcast. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell to catch future episodes and videos there. Until next time, remember that your questions matter. Doubts are normal, and making sense of faith is a lifelong journey. We'll see you on the next episode of Making Sense of Faith.